This week on the Documentary Review Podcast, Jonathan and I watch people put themselves through hell just to prove they can as we watch the 2013 documentary Desert Runners. Welcome to the podcast. I am PT.
And I'm Jonathan. Glad you can join us as always.
Yeah. Hey, let me do that. I feel like I may have started too soon because the live thing popped up in the middle of my thing. So no one's viewing it. So if you're watching this later on YouTube, I apologize. But if you're listening to this on the iTunes, you'll never know. I'm starting over. This week on the Documentary Review Podcast, Jonathan and I watch people put themselves through hell just to prove they can as we discuss the 2013 documentary Desert Runners. Welcome to the show. I am PT.
And I'm Jonathan. Glad you can join us.
Yeah. How's it going, Jonathan?
Going pretty good. How you doing, PT?
Good. I've been working hard lately on the writing and the day job. I've got a book coming out tomorrow, a novella.
Nice. So, congrats.
Thank you. Go check it out, people. You can download the first one for free, Thorns and Tangles, and the second one's coming out tomorrow.
Absolutely. I don't want to oversell it, but possibly the greatest book ever written.
Indeed. If you're like, man, I love Game of Thrones, but I wish it were like fun and not like upsetting, then you may like Thorns and Tangles, which is free to download. And book 2 is coming out tomorrow, so pretty excited. I think it's my favorite thing that I've ever put out, so pretty excited for it.
Sweet.
What's new with you, Jonathan?
Living the dream, running around, working hard and staying fit. We used to do a Real Dad Fitness podcast. I've been back on the fitness bandwagon pretty hard, getting in 1 or 2 workouts a day, so I've been feeling pretty good about myself about that. So,
nice. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. I just made a temporary trade for my dad. He bought a bunch of basically my mom passed away and he really liked backpacking, and so he went out and bought like a ton of like really nice backpacking equipment, and then went on a solo backpacking trip. And I've been wanting to do some backpacking on the Appalachian Trail, so I made a temporary trade of the guitar and an amp for his backpacking equipment. So I'm going to be doing some backpacking on the Appalachian Trail. So I better get in shape for that a little bit.
Sweet. That sounds like a blast. But I'm gonna course correct and direct us back to Desert Runners, and the point of our show being reviewing documentaries this week.
Do it.
Desert Runners.
Nice.
Yeah. So
give us the synopsis.
So Desert Runners, as the name suggests, it is a documentary about people running in the desert doing ultra marathons. And there are 4 desert ultra marathons per year, and the crowning achievement is to complete all 4 within a calendar year. And this follows the journey of 4 separate individuals around the world who try and accomplish said feats. So it kind of gives you a look at the people themselves, certainly focusing mostly on the actual events, but gives you a little insight into who the people are and what kind of person wants to go out and punish their body in a pretty extreme way.
Yeah. So first of all, I almost forgot. Did you like it? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yeah, thumbs up for me for sure.
Yeah, I give it a thumbs up. I noticed on Internet Movie Database that they said, like, they always have those people who like this movie, like that movie, and their comparison for this one was tiny houses. And at first I was like, that's weird, but then I was thinking about it. I was like, this is kind of like the same level almost of documentary as tiny houses. You know what I mean? Like the production. This was way more expensive, I'm sure, because I had to go all around the world.
Right.
But other than that, like, I feel like this was like a similar. Like, let's look at these like eclectic people who are doing this interesting thing, and in a similar kind of style. So I could see it.
Yeah,
but I like this a little more, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think this was more entertaining, more well done than Tiny Houses. Like, Tiny Houses was like a cool premise that could have been done in like a 15-minute short documentary.
Right.
And then this kept me interested the whole time. I was that drew me into their. You didn't get too deep into the people's lives, into the runners' lives, but you got deep enough that I was like kind of rooting for them. I wanted all of them to finish, but I was almost sure that not all of them would, which as it was the case, that they didn't all finish. Let's start in the beginning for anybody out there wondering what the heck is an ultramarathon or a desert runner or any of that stuff. They kind of throw this out there in the beginning, but all these ultramarathons are 250 kilometers, which for any of you listening out there that are American is 155 miles.
Pretty far. So technically pretty far, I said. So
yeah.
I think technically an ultramarathon is anything that's over marathon length, but these are like the super
right.
So you could be like, yeah, I'm going 30 miles. That's an ultramarathon.
Right.
I would technically qualify, but this is definitely
right. This is pretty hardcore, obviously. So 155-mile race, and then like I've always been like torn on things like this where. Yeah, it's a 155-mile race, but it's over the course of 5 days. I mean, not to diminish it. I mean, obviously, it's like an impossible-ish feat, but it's like, is it really the same race if you're just, do...
Here's what I'm pretty fascinated by ultramarathons, and I don't think I would ever do one probably, but I am like, it's always like on the cusp, like, man, I would almost want to do that because like what I love about it is like it's super impressive feat that is basically obtainable by, I would think, most people if you were to dedicate yourself to it and really want to do it. Like if I went out there and I was like, yeah, I'm going to run a sub 4-minute mile. Yes, sorry, PT. It's probably not happening. Like no matter how hard I train or whatever. But I think ultramarathon is like one of those things that like you don't have to be 25 and you don't have to be super duper athletic to do it. Like if you're super dedicated to it, you can do an ultramarathon, and that's kind of what fascinates me and what I like about it.
Well, I definitely agree. I think you're right on the money that if you're dedicated enough, you can make it happen. Like I said, it's over. I mean, there's no like wussy way to do an ultramarathon. Like you do it and it takes you, 30 hours longer than the first place finisher. Or you still just did an ultramarathon, and these are even more ridiculous because they're in the desert and you got to carry around the stuff that you are going to have for the race. So everybody has these massive backpacks that they're, I don't know that it is like a running race as much as it is, just like a completion race, obviously.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, obviously it's 155 miles. It's insane. And through horrible, horrible, treacherous environments.
Right.
Which is why it kind of sucked me in to begin with. The one thing they did in the documentary that kind of pissed me off is right in the beginning, they threw all these stats out at you. But they were only up on the screen for like 4 seconds. I mean, it was just barely long enough to like read them. And then like they were instantly jumping to the next topic. It's like, guys, you could have made this documentary like 2.5 minutes longer and given us a second to absorb those facts. That would have been great.
That's funny.
Yeah. It totally stood out for me in the beginning because it was like, oh, there's 4 desert marathons and they're running these 4 different locations. And then boom, it's the next screen. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess it wasn't that important. The next screen is like, completing all 4 in 1 year is blah, blah, blah. And they're 250 kilometers per piece. And then it's boom. And then they're like talking about the next thing. I was like, man, chill. We're not running a race here. We're watching a documentary.
So kind of like the setup for this is like it's the Grand Slam of desert races, and there's these 4 desert races, and the first person to do them all in 1 year was Dean Karnazes, and I read his like autobiography or whatever. So I've got to throw in a couple of little tidbits about him before we go further, because man, that guy's like I actually read 2 books by him. He's definitely like, he wouldn't phrase it this way at all, like in his books, but I would say like he is not a normal like physiology or stuff like that at all. Like he like his like running backstory is like he was like, I think he was like turning 30 and he was pretty out of like, I don't know. He said in his book he's pretty out of shape. Who knows what that really means? But he was like about to cheat on his wife, and he was at this bar super drunk. And then he was like, I hate the way my life's going. And he like just left the bar and ran 30 miles. Like he'd never run before. He just went out and ran 30 miles. And then like he went and like ran tons of ultra marathons. And then his second book, he did this thing where he ran a marathon every day for 50 days, one in each of the 50 states. And like all the doctors that he consulted with beforehand were like, dude, this is totally going to mess you up. Like, do not do this. This is going to cause all these like internal organ problems and all this stuff. And like afterwards, he's like, yeah, look, none of that happened. Everyone should be able to do this. But I was still at the end like, I don't know, dude, you might.
Yeah, like, you might be a genetic freak on that one.
generally I don't go for like the whole like genetic, thing, but like in his case, I was like, yeah, I don't know, dude. I think you're the exception to the
rule. Right.
So anyway, but D. Cardassius did all four of these in the same year, and that kind of like seemed to open the floodgates a little bit to other people wanting to try.
Sure, it is amazing how that works with anything. It's like things that are deemed somewhat impossible. As soon as one person does it, it just changes the mindset of the possibility of it happening, and then people just go forward and make it happen. But
right, yeah, because a lot of the people that were featured in this were not necessarily like elite athletes or whatever.
No, yeah, the one guy was like, yeah, I'm just a regular guy. And Dave, the guy that was from Ireland, he's just like, yeah, just an old dude. He was the old, and then he's like, yeah, just an old dude, normal guy. And like, I was somewhat inspired, actually. Like, I was like, yeah, this seems like something that might totally be worth doing, because like, I don't like, there's certainly an element of when you do something really, really hard, like, one of these desert ultramarathons, it makes the rest of life seem so much easier, and like keeps you so more even keel. At least it does for me. Like, whenever I do something that I'm like, like, where it really pushes my limits and boundaries, like the next time I run into a problem that I used to think was a big problem, I'm always like, oh, this is not so bad, or this is not a big deal. So I would imagine there's got to be a lot of that. It's got to change you in a somewhat major way. Like they were saying, like for an example, in the documentary, they're like, yeah, people will be like, they've been in the mall for 4 hours and they're whining because their feet hurt because they've been walking for 4 hours, whatever. And then they go on show like disgusting. I don't even know if you can call them blisters at this point, where like just huge chunks of the skin is peeled off of their feet and stuff.
Yeah, I've watched. I think this is my third documentary I've watched about ultramarathons, and man, they're all into show gross foot stuff. The gross foot stuff is a big fun thing to show in documentaries about ultramarathons. And from the reading I've done, I know that like most people who run ultramarathons just lose their toenails; they just fall off or whatever. But they didn't really show that in this. But
yeah, so in other words, like, yeah, so after you do that, like later on when you're standing around, your foot hurts a little bit. I'm sure you're like, psh, big deal.
Right. So the documentary focused on a lot of different people, and I'm curious, Jonathan, did you have like a favorite person or someone that you kind of connected with?
Yeah, so of the four main characters, if you will, the four people they followed along, I guess I'm gonna have to say I like the story of I think his name was Tremaine. He was the guy who was an ex-soldier, and his wife had died at a very young age, unexpectedly. And he was kind of interesting to me because he changed a little bit, or at least that, it was hard to say because they didn't focus, they didn't dive too deep into their personal lives outside of these races. But like, he seemed to have changed a bit over the year, and you could tell like he was a guy that was grieving over the loss of his wife, which had happened, I think, a year prior to him starting these races. And like, even right away when he said that, I was thinking, like, if you had like a huge loss like that, and his wife was 33 when she died, she got cancer and died quickly, and it was like, yeah, maybe he did the smartest possible thing, where if you're trying to like break through that kind of grief, to get yourself through that first hurdle of remembering that life continues, just throw yourself at something impossible, and then it gives you a second focus. And while you're trying to accomplish that, I think, at least in this case, he was able to make huge strides in getting on with his life. So I thought his story was interesting. You?
Yeah, he was my favorite too, for sure. Definitely connected with him, and I think it's like partly that thing that he was just really grieving and raw still. So there's just like that. He didn't quite have like the filter that everyone else have of like, hey, I'm being filmed in a documentary. He was just like a little like punch drunk or whatever. Somebody who's grieving. It's just a little like more candid, a little more. Yeah, it just seemed very real to me.
Yeah.
So I liked him. I like the girl too, who had an unfortunate mishap in Egypt.
That was like the most shocking. Like, I thought for sure that was going to be like the part where, like, when she starts telling the story, I was like, because she's talking about she's in the Sahara Desert, and running along, and she's like, I think she says she's like an Ethiopian guy or a Egyptian guy or something like that. It must have been Egyptian.
Yeah.
And anyhow, I keep waiting for it to be like, yeah, it's just a hallucination from like being dehydrated.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden she's like, yeah, and then the guy pulls me in the bushes and sexually assaults me. And I was like, what? I mean, where are all the people in the race? I mean, you got cameras all over. You're in the midst of a documentary.
Yeah. I think in the ultra marathons they get pretty spread out, so I could see how.
I can see it a bit too, but most of the people aren't the subject of a documentary either. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think the documentary people were like running alongside them or anything.
Right. Well, I mean, from time to time they were.
Occasionally, popping in there, see what was up. But yeah,
I can't believe there's that. Then the Dave, the American guy, that didn't finish one because he got sick. Like the first one, that was the other thing where like at first in the documentary I was like, yeah, you know, I could really see this because it would be a lot of personal growth. And then all of a sudden the one guy dies during the race. I was like, oh my god, maybe this is a horrible idea. This is something that that you shouldn't.
Yeah, he was the guy who died like was not too far from the checkpoint too, and then some dudes ran by and it was like, hey,
yeah, this guy's in bad shape. He's like 3 miles back.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my gosh. And the checkpoints were really close together. They were like 10 Ks, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, not that far apart. I mean, 6 miles apart. Yeah, you would have thought somebody else would have been like. He must have been. Well, I guess if he was in that better shape, he was probably, you know, not doing so well. Ooh, hold on a second.
Right.
I've got some issues. Can you hold up for 1 second, Ty? And just entertain the crowd. I'll be right back.
I got it. So the 4 deserts, you may be asking yourself, PT, what are the 4 deserts that make up the Desert Grand Slam series? We've got the Atacama Crossing in Chile. Probably saying that way wrong, but it's the driest place on Earth. Hey, we're just going through the. I was just going to run through what the 4 races are. So I'm going to run through them, and you stop me when you get to what you thought was the hardest race, or what you think is the race that you would least like to participate in. So we've got in Chile, we've got the Atacama Crossing. I'm going with, which is the driest place on Earth. Then we've got the Gobi in China, which is the windiest place on Earth. Then we've got the Sierra, where apparently random guys pull you to the bushes and sexually assault you, which is super not good. And then we have the last desert, which was in Antarctica. So which of those would you least like to participate in, Jonathan?
I gotta go with Antarctica.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, one for a couple different reasons. One, it's just a loop.
Yeah, that does suck.
That is horrible. At least like the other ones where you'd be like, you know, that's kind of fun to say, like, I ran from point A to point B, and especially the farther apart they are, it just seems so much more impressive. Running loops sucks. I mean, like, at any time, even like, you know, even if I'm around my neighborhood and I'm like, you know, I'm just going to do like a 5 mile run, but I just going to do like a 1.5 mile loop, you know, 3 times or whatever kind of thing. I hate that. I can't stand it. So I can't imagine doing 155 miles. I don't know how big the loops were, if they were 10 miles or whatever they were. It was, I'm sure that would suck, just doing loops. 2, I don't like the cold, even though I'm sure it's not that bad because you're running, but I don't know. That just sounds awful. It was 15 below when they were running that race. Yeah, and 3, it didn't have like a discernible endpoint to any given day. It's like at least the other ones, even though one of them was 100K in one day, but you know, at least you could be like, well, okay, we're going to go 28 miles today and then take a break. And the Antarctica one was just like, well, all right, well, as long as the weather's okay, we're just going to keep going until you're like kind of done. I think that would be a really hard way to run a race like that.
Yeah, so that would suck. In general, I think I prefer the cold to the heat. So I would temperature wise, I wouldn't mind the Antarctica one as much as like the Sierra. I don't think, but yeah, that running in a loop would be pretty harsh.
Yeah. Pretty
harsh. These ultra marathons were different in like you said, that there's a certain amount each day they're supposed to run, whereas like the like one famous ultramarathon is the Western States 100, which is a 100-mile race and through the Rocky Mountains, where it's just a 100-mile race. You just run, the 100 miles, and when you're done, or whatever. That was one was featured big time in Dean Karnazes' book, and they said one of the, like, for that one you have to have people, like, they don't let you register unless you have people who are like your support people, and it's a really hard job to be the support person, because like the whole point of that person is to convince you to continue, because they said basically that race is so hard that every single person at some point is like, yeah, I'm quitting, and their support person has to be like, no, you're not, buddy. So you have to have like 6 people who run different legs with you or whatever, and like alternate.
Wow.
But that person has to also be like, if they got to make the judgment call, like if you're like medically messed up, they got to like, make you stop. So they have to like be like the Rock, to be like, no, you are not quitting, but then also make the judgment call and be like, yep, you're quitting.
Yeah, you don't want to be the Rocky standing in the corner holding the towel when Gordo throws the last punch.
Throw the damn towel. Indeed. But yeah, these ultramarathons were interesting in that there were little breaks in between, so a little different. But
yeah. I mean, like, I've always been confused by it. In my mind, a race is something you start in it, and then when you stop, you're done with it.
Right.
Not when you stop, you take a break, take a night's rest, come back and continue the race. It seems weird, but not to say it wasn't hard, because I mean, they're basically running marathons or near marathons every day for 5 consecutive days in super harsh environments. But yeah, and like, speaking of time too, so I think it was in the second race, the Gobi one, that Dave, the one guy, gets sick, so he can't like hold, like, he's literally vomiting during the last leg of the race. Like, at one point he's like, yeah, I vomited 35 times. He's like, wait, no, it's 37 times. He's keeping track or whatever, I guess, because the medical people probably told him to keep track of it.
Right.
But it took him 26 consecutive hours to finish the last leg, so longer than a day. He was just vomiting and moving forward. Yeah,
that would suck.
Yeah, that'd be pretty. I mean, again, when you get done with that, that's got to be like when you got the flu and they're like, "Can you come into work?" You probably be like, "Yeah, no big deal."
Right.
Yeah.
I've only vomited 24 times, so
right. Oh yeah. Oh wait. All I have to do is sit in a desk and like read through reports. Oh, I went through the harshest environment known to man for 26 consecutive hours, being sick as anyone's ever been. Yeah. I think I can handle it.
What do you think? This is a little bit, I guess, philosophical about this whole thing, but what do you think it says about our world that, like, for the last however many, thousands, hundreds of thousands, whatever of years, we've been straining to be more comfortable, basically. You know what I mean? We're just like, man, if only I could get a little rest, I'd be good. And now we're like at a point with society where we're like, man, I need to push myself and try something different, and we're doing these crazy things to basically the point of earlier societies would have been to try to avoid. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, like, certainly, I think we're still trying to be even like lazier and cushier for the most part, for the mass majority. And I don't even think that it's necessarily like these. You don't get too much insight, but especially right away in this documentary, the insight for the personality traits that lead someone to an ultramarathon, for all of these guys, basically, it was like a narcissism where they're like, well, I'm not just a cog in the wheel. I'm not just like part of society. I do something different. I'm on the fringe. I want to, and it was like, well, that's like being older, although some of these people are as old as I am or older.
Sure.
Like I definitely had that mentality when I was young, and then like at this point in life, I'm like, well, no matter what a lot of your actions are, you're still you, and that's really like the underlying important thing. So I mean, like, whether you're living a suburban life or running ultramarathons, you're still you. I don't think you need to do any of that stuff to prove yourself or to like set yourself apart from anyone else. Not that I discourage doing ultramarathons, but I just thought that was interesting that all 4 of the people they followed basically said that exact same thing. I'm not just like everybody else.
Right.
And to not be like other people, I'm going to go run ultra marathons because nobody does that.
Right.
So I think it might be more of that than people trying to be tough. They just want to be nonconformist.
Yeah, that is interesting. So, and if you think about the 4 different people, they're definitely at like 4 different stages of life, so to speak. You've got the younger woman who's like kind of trying to find her place in the world, kind of thing, and then you got the dude who's like, I always wanted to be a professional athlete and I failed at that, so let me do this. And then you got the dude whose wife died, who's just like looking for something, and then you got the older dude who's probably just trying to, find a way to have another adventure kind of thing. But yeah,
right. And also all of them were type A personalities, except maybe the old dude. It was harder to tell because you didn't hear much from him. But I mean, the young girl was in law school, and I'm sure top of her class, and she didn't just want to like do the ultramarathon. She wanted to like, succeed. The other guy was, he was an athlete when he was young, wanted to be a professional athlete, and then he was like, well, it seems like everybody does marathons, so I'm going to do something tougher than marathons. It was like this total, type A personality. And the soldier guy, he wasn't just in the military, but he was special forces, and he was all like, yeah, I'm not awesome, I'm super awesome. And so they all had that, which, I mean, it makes sense. That's what's going to draw you to pushing your limits.
Yeah it did seem like there was a really good, like super good, like I totally agree with what you're saying, but it's interesting that goes alongside of, it seemed like there was like a really strong sense of like community and stuff, and like helping each other within the ultra marathon.
Sure, that is definitely a brotherhood. I mean, like, because there isn't one. You saw a lot of the same faces in this documentary.
Right.
When going from one ultra marathon to the other, the Desert Series, it was a lot of the same people. And even if it's not part of the same people, like, there's a community that develops an irregular marathon. Like, if you run a marathon, you get a T-shirt at the end that says whatever, Colfax Marathon, 2012. Right. And like, when you see somebody else wearing that exact same T-shirt, you kind of give them a little head nod, like, yeah, I ran the same marathon. That was a big thing. It's a little unspoken thing between you and the other person or whatever. So I'm sure it's just so much more when it's like, there's the Rock and Roll Marathon Series, 20,000 people run those marathons. It's not exactly exclusive. When you got 100 people running these other marathons, and not only that, but you're with them for 5 solid days, and probably more like a week, because there's like a base camp and then like getting to it and a dinner afterwards. So yeah, that's a brotherhood. I mean, that's an exclusive club that you have to earn the right to be in. So
yeah. Speaking of exclusive clubs, just because I like to always throw a little class thing in there. This is definitely a rich dude sport, a rich person sport. You know what I mean? Like, there's not too many lower class people involved in the ultra marathon scene, I would say.
Yeah, I would say probably none. Just because, like, I thought of that too. Even like the special forces guy, the dad that was in the military. One, I thought, like, who is taking care of your kids? Because I mean, like, that is, one, obviously is a single dad, and two, it's at least 5 weeks out of the year that he's gone just for the races, let alone the training, or 4 weeks out of the year. I'm sure there's at least 7 days, and I mean, that's a lot of vacationing. Although all these guys, all of them were like European, at least that they followed. Even the American Dave lived in London, where you have way more vacation time. So maybe that helps if you're just not from America, where you get like an hour and a half off per year or something like that. I forget what it is, but yeah. But certainly, even at that, I didn't look up the cost of doing an ultra marathon. It's got to be pretty pricey.
Yeah,
I mean, you're flying to extreme locations. You got tons of equipment. I can't imagine what it costs to put on the race, but it's got to be a lot. So yeah. Not for poor people, not for ultra rich people either, because they don't do that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's too hard.
Optimizing their income.
Right.
So after seeing this, what's your interest level in ultra marathoning, and we'll take that. Anything? What's your interest level in like the 30-mile ultramarathon, and scaling up from there? What's the top limit that you would do?
Oh, I would consider like after watching this, and like granted I just finished it today or whatever, but like I would totally put it in the realm of things I would consider to do like a desert marathon, or ultra marathon or whatever. Like, because I mean, like I think one, like you said, it's possible with some determination and training and planning, you could do it. And I think it would be an awesome feat to grow as a person, if you actually did it. So I would, although I did note down like maybe not after that one guy died. I was like, oh, maybe not so much.
You're like, as you died, you'd probably like, it's so stupid.
Yeah, this definitely falls in the category of regrets.
Yes. I had all the privilege in the world, and now.
Right. So.
Yeah, this is totally like on the vanity thing, I guess, but like I used to listen to this podcast of these two ultramarathoner guys, and this one guy said this one thing that made me be like, yeah, I would like to do that. Where he was like, he was at work and he was going to go give a speech in front of some of his like a bunch of people, like his colleagues, basically. And the person, like his boss, was going to introduce him, and he was like, which is a situation I'm often in. So his boss was like, this person, Tom here he's done this, he's done that for our company, and he's done this and this. And oh yeah, he also runs 100-mile races. And then everybody was like, ooh. So I would be like, ooh, yeah, I would I want that to be my introduction.
There you go.
But yeah, I would definitely consider doing an ultra marathon. I don't know if I would do the desert one, but I would definitely consider doing some longer races. That'd be fun.
All right. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, spur of the moment challenge for you or whatever thing. We're both in our, both hit middle age right now.
Jeez, yeah.
I'll tell you what, we can either start this year or next year. Let's start with a half marathon. Okay. And run a race together every year, but every year the race has to be longer than the prior year.
Oh shit.
So we can't do it anymore.
All right.
You down? You game? We're both pretty affluent.
Sure.
I think I can swing a pretty steep race entry and wherever we want to go in the world. It's all good.
Right. Cool. I'm in for that.
All right. We'll discuss the details later. So you heard it here live. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever broadcast live.
Awesome. Cool. Anything else to say about this one?
Let me put my last page. I really like the ending. I mean, they do a little synopsis, and I like the fact that like there are a couple of things that I thought were really cool, like inspiring, cool. One, Dave, the one guy does get really sick, and it does scare him all when that guy Nick dies. I mean, like it certainly like puts everything in a different perspective, and so he gets sick during the Sahara and drops out, so he does not complete. So there's a spoiler for you. It doesn't complete the whatever 4 desert calendar year thing. But he comes back, so that's the third race, and he doesn't make it. He drops out, and he's I think he did the right move, putting safety first. But then after that, he comes back and he still runs the 4th one, even though he doesn't get his cycle or whatever. He doesn't bow out. He doesn't quit. I thought that was really inspiring. And in the end, like at the end of it, I was like, yeah, this is a very cool thing. I think it would be, if you have the ability to take a drastic amount of time off for training and then actually going to the races and spending it and have a support structure that allows it. Yeah, I think you'd be a better person for it. So, I mean, like I thought it was inspiring and a cool way to end it too.
Yeah. How about as you're talking about that, maybe think of what about the one guy whose intestines were like coming out or whatever?
Yeah, I was a little confused by that. I was like, like literally his intestines are coming out, or like he feels it internally and he's just like self-diagnosing? Is this
right?
Like
I don't know.
I don't know either, but I was like,
because the way he said it, dude. The way he said it was like, he's like, yeah, my stomach lining ripped and my intestines were coming out. So I was confused about that too. Like, I don't know what that means.
Right, then, like if it's literally coming out of your abdominal cavity into like the outside world, you should stop running. I'm like, no harm in that. You've proven your toughness. You can just quit the race at that point.
The other thing I do have to fault this documentary on a little bit is, man, that last Antarctica race. I feel like the filmmakers were just like, you know what, we got it. This is cold out here, dude. We are good, because they did not show much of that. That was like the last 10 minutes of the documentary.
Yeah, I was like, I literally thought at one point, I was like, wow, I guess nobody's going to complete the 4 series thing, because there's only 10 minutes left of the documentary and we haven't even got to the 4th race yet. But then they were like, and then everyone went to Antarctica and ran. The end. So yeah, there was that.
Good stuff. All right. Well, how many stars are you going to give this bad boy out of 5?
I'll give it 3.5. I liked it. It was a good documentary, but not quite 4-star worthy.
Yeah, I think 3.5 is where I'm at as well. Maybe after we've run our first ultra marathon, we'll be like, bump it up to 4 or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. If eventually this was the catalyst of doing a life-altering event, sure, yeah, then I'll bump it up to 4.
I give it 3.75 for that.
All right.
All right, so 3.5s all around. Cool. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but do you have any documentaries for us to?
I do. I snagged 3 because it is technically my week to go. So,
okay.
All right. Documentary number 1, Bigger, Stronger, Faster, which I know you've seen, but it's about anabolic steroid use for athletes, basically in general, and kind of takes an in-depth look at that. Next one is Room 237, documentary about basically The Shining. Room 237 in the movie The Shining with Stanley Kubrick is, and it basically takes a bunch of like, I would say like conspiracy theorists almost, except they're just obsessed with The Shining, and kind of takes a super deep look into it, which I have not seen. And then there is The Source Family, which kind of takes a look into a cult from California in 1973 through I think 76 or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah. So there you go.
Cool. So I've seen the first 2. Man, I'm really tempted to pick Room 237 because I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it. Yeah, I don't know. It is, well, man, I shouldn't give my thoughts on it right now. So I feel like with Room 237, you could have really strong thoughts one way or the other. So I don't know, like you could have a hard time finishing it, or you could really like it. Yeah, let's do Room 237, I guess.
All right, yeah, you piqued my interest, because you know what, one way or the other, I would love it if I either loved it or hated it. I would like it if I had the opposite opinion issue for once, because it drives me crazy when at the end we're like, we're 2 very like-minded people, which is cool for friendship long term, but it's not great for entertainment value.
Cool. All right. Well, here's hoping we have polar opposite views on Room 237. I will say no more about it, so I don't want to sway you.
Now I'm intrigued, so yeah, I want to go ahead and check it out.
Cool. Good deal. So if you have any thoughts on Desert Runners, email us at feedback@documentaryreviewpodcast.com. That'll do it. We'll talk to you next time. I am PT. Keep it real.
And I'm Jonathan. We'll see you next week.